So Jake, the Muslim metaphysician, admits the Trinity is logical. You don't believe me? Take a listen for yourself.
This
Right.
model that I just gave, is this logically consistent or does it have a contradiction within it?
What's that?
I agree that paraconsistent logic. I agree. I know all of these things. Okay. But I'm asking you,
So
according to what
in your own logical system, the answer has been the same the entire time.
okay, so
In your own logical system, if you're using relative identity logic, then yes, it can be formalized in a consistent manner within its own.
Okay, so he says it's internally consistent to your own logic, but wait, doesn't Jake later say that he's trying to do an internal critique? Let's take a listen.
Three men, Peter, James, and John, sharing the same nature. And the point is to show that there's an inconsistency, internal inconsistency within the model and within the claims itself. And that.
So Jake says that he's trying to do an internal critique, but then he says that the Trinity is internally consistent in terms of logic. Now, Jake also said in the debate that Nick is trying to make this hard distinction between logic and metaphysics. But for all you guys watching, please remind me, what was the debate about? The logical problem of the Trinity? And as Nick correctly defined logical consistency, which is that there is at least one model which can represent those set of statements consistently, that's what the debate is about. If Nick provides a single model of the Trinity, and remember, Jake Brancatella, however you say his name, the Muslim metaphysician, did not even know what a model is. He didn't even know what he was there to debate.
Because I told you that, okay, what is a model? In classical logic, what is a model?
Model is a set of premises that are being used to describe a particular doctrine.
He didn't even know what a model was. But wait, also, he's trying to use the LPT and its standard formalization, the Father is God, the Son is God, whatnot, with identity, as he says, but he doesn't know what the identity operator is. Let's take a listen again.
Yep, there you go. Good.
Okay. Jake, what is an identity operator in first order logic?
What does that have to do with my argument?
Because I'm giving you a formalization, and formalization uses an identity operator. So I'm asking, do you know what it is?
I have no idea what it is.
Okay, an identity.
So Jake doesn't know what identity is. He didn't know what first order logic is. And wait, what else did he not know? He didn't even know how to read the model Nick provided.
Devised.
Wait, do you even know how to read this? Can you put it back on this? Do you know how to read this? Like, do you know what I'm saying here?
Dude, you out of your mind? You're
Just
not
asking
even
you.
listening.
Like, if not, it's okay. It's totally fine.
You're not listening to what I'm saying at all.
Okay, I understand. But I'm asking you a question. I'm asking you a question. Do you know how to read this?
No, I do not.
So, all right, bro, you could have just said that from the jump.
Remember, guys, this is a debate about the logical problem of the Trinity. Jake is supposed to be this guy whom all the Muslims go to, who is well knowledgeable in logic. I'm not saying all of you guys watching are dumb for not being able to read that formalization. Of course not. Not everyone studies logic. That doesn't mean you're dumb. That doesn't mean you're not smart. But if you are presenting yourself as the top guy, as one of those guys who studies the logical problem of the Trinity, who studies logic, and you're actively putting yourself in a debate in front of thousands of people, claiming you are that guy, then yes, you are dumb. You do not know what you're talking about. You got embarrassed. If you can't read, and guys, for all of you guys who don't know how to read logic, this is easy to read. It's just a bunch of P's and F's and conjunctions, like an identity operators. It's just saying the Father's the same God as the Son, and it's extremely easy to read for someone who's studied any amount of formal logic. Now, so Jake actually accepts relative identity. Well, why do I say this? Well, let's look at this clip.
Think that identity operators in first order logic are limited to absolute identity?
I don't know what you mean by the question.
So when we use the equal symbol in first order logic, is it
Yeah.
limited to absolute identity, or can we use other types of identity?
It depends on what system it is. It depends on who is using the equal sign. It can be interpreted differently.
So it can be used differently?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, great. So I want to show you.
So Jake says identity can be interpreted differently in first order logic. Now, this isn't a simple statement in terms of like a trivial one. I mean, when we say can be in logic, we're saying that it's logically possible, right? For something to be logically possible, especially in the case here of relative identity, that means that you accept the identity operator as it's relativized in the relative identity interpretation. Otherwise, it would be logically impossible. There would be no interpretation in which satisfies the set of statements using the relative identity operator. So just by him saying it can be used differently, he's conceded all of his objections against relative identity, because he already accepted that identity can be interpreted in such a way that it is relativized, which means it's not impossible, which means he accepts it as a part of his logical language. A good way to think about this is thinking about contradictions, right? When someone asks, are contradictions or true contradictions possible in under a logical system? You might say, well, I'm a classical logician. And then they ask you again, okay, well, according to first order logic, classical logic, is it possible? You're going to say, no, it's not possible. The system rules out the possibility of there being true contradictions. Same thing here. If you say relative identity, it's possible for the identity operator to be relativized. You are accepting it as a part of the logical language, even if you never employ it. So there's no issue with relative identity itself anymore, right? You've already accepted it. Now it's just a matter of application. Let's get to the main point of how Jake conceded this entire debate. Jake says, as he's doing a consistency argument, he's doing an internal critique. Now remember, we're talking about if the Trinity is illogical. The domain of discourse is logic, right? He's referring to standard literature that's referring to the LPT, logical problem of the Trinity, which is a formal argument. He then says he's trying to prove inconsistency, but then he says, as I'll clip again and post it again here, he then says that the Trinity is internally consistent according to Nick's model. Not that he could read his model. I guess he was just trying to grant that it could be internally consistent. But he also said, as I posted before, that he's trying to do an internal critique, internal consistency. So you can't say it's internally consistent, but I'm trying to show you an internal inconsistency. He conceded the whole debate as soon as he said that Nick has a model that is internally consistent.
Wagon does in the book, right, where he uses relative identity logic, and this is what he describes it as, then yes, it can be consistent within its own paradigm.
So not only that, you may be thinking, well, maybe logic is being used in the broad sense here. Well, actually, Nick clarified for him multiple times that he's talking about classical logic. Now, Jake, within the debate, never objected to that until after he started talking about non-classical, how relative identity, he's implying that it's non-classical. But Nick clarified multiple times that what he's trying to do is provide a model within classical logic that is consistent. Jake never objected to that. Jake just kept bringing up that it's not, that it can be internally consistent, but he just doesn't accept that it's logical. Well, what does that mean? I accept that you have a consistent model, but it's not logical. Well, as Nick defined logical for him at the beginning, gave him the standard definition, to be logical, it has to be consistent. That is a contradiction in terms. You can't say that it is internally consistent but not logical. If it's internally consistent, if there's a model and you accept classical logic, then it is consistent.